I'm back again to react again for you. And today I'm going to do Ben Shapiro asked Bill Maher if he would ever vote Republican. Okay, so religion and politics I don't get into because I'm not willing to compromise my opinion. So if there's not one party that is 100% wholeheartedly what I agree with, I'm not going to say, oh, it's okay that they do this really bad shit because I like this one thing they do. I'm not into that. I'm not going to compromise my feelings and my opinions to just lump onto a bandwagon. So that being said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be into this. I'm not just going to fake it. I refuse to fake it. If there was one person that I really felt encompassed my values, I would vote for them either way. I'm excited to get into this.
As long as the Republicans are a party who, in my view, does not take seriously the emergency of climate change. And
That part.
I'm not sure if they even believe in American democracy anymore. Certainly most Republicans, I think, did not in Congress condemn what happened on January 6th, trying to not count the votes in an honest election. As long as those two issues are what they are for Republicans, I don't think they're even savable. Whereas the Democrats, maybe I'm being a cockeyed optimist, but I still think they are savable.
Right.
So let's talk about those two issues, because I know there are a lot of people in my audience who are thinking, okay, so if we just solve those two issues, then maybe Bill Maher votes Republican for the first time. Have you ever voted Republican?
Absolutely. I voted for Bob Dole in '96. Now, I admit that was a sentimental vote because, I don't think I ever told you this. My parents, both World War II veterans, met in World War II. My mother was a nurse. I think he was the last one from the World War II era, and he was going to lose.
So it's an easy vote, isn't it?
So
That's the other thing about voting in
It wasn't like
California.
if he won. It's so different than where the Republican Party is now. It's not like if he won, he was a crazy person who was, going to start not counting the votes or do the crazy things that Trump did when he was president or, not concede elections or something. He was just, he was a Kansas conservative. And I voted for McCain in the 2000 primary, I think, when he was,
Against
the original Maverick, and I may have voted for him in that election.
I feel like I liked McCain too.
And I may have voted for him in that election. If he was in 2000, if he had gotten the nomination.
So let's start with the climate change thing, and then we'll get to the voting thing. So on climate change, there's, I think, sort of a reasonable spectrum of opinion inside the Republican Party, and then there are the people who just outright say climate change is not happening, it's not human caused. The position that's been taken by a lot of Republicans, including me, I say the climate change is happening. I fully accept the IPCC estimates and the range of estimates from the IPCC. I just think that the solutions that are being proposed are completely unreasonable. So I think this idea that we're going to just pour money into green energy and this is going to magically solve the problem does not solve the basic problem, which is that most of the forms of energy we're talking about are not nearly competitive on the world stage with carbon-based energy.
But what about a carbon tax?
So a carbon tax would be almost impossible to do globally is the issue. So the biggest emitters not on a per capita basis, but on an absolute basis are China and India right now. And they're not going to carbon tax anything. Right? We still have a global competition with China and India in terms of foreign policy, and allowing them to pollute up the wazoo while we sacrifice our own energy ambitions. That seems like a bad recipe for Europe right now, for example, with...
So my thing is people get really charged about the word climate change. I don't care what you call it. I don't care. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But we are polluting the planet, and it can only take so much.
Energy ambitions. That seems like a bad recipe for Europe right now, for example, with regard to Russia, which means that if you're actually going to do something, what I've talked about before is doing things like building seawalls, exploring geoengineering. Adapting. Because humans are great at adapting, and we suck at actually preventing. We're very good at adapting, suck at preventing.
Does adapting include like going to Mars, like Elon Musk?
That's not like top of the agenda. I think that seawalls are better. But sure, I like space travel as much as the next guy, but I don't think...
Mars? And I am a big fan.
I'm not going to spend lots of money on it, but this isn't like top of my proposal list.
Okay, I'm a big Elon Musk fan.
Me too.
But Mars, come on. If it gets that bad, I'm sure I won't.
So we can just go ruin another planet?
Come on. If it gets that bad, I mean, I'm sure I won't be around for this.
Right.
But Mars, please. I mean, there's no air.
I mean, do I get to be there by myself? I mean, am I bothered often? Like,
There's no air.
yeah, no, there's some problems.
200 below zero. There are sandstorms that last for months at a time. It's no matter how bad we screwed the Earth, it couldn't be worse than that. It just.
There are fewer people. There are fewer people. The company isn't
Is
as
that
bad.
good?
I mean, it depends where you're living.
I mean, the restaurants, there's no atmosphere.
That's true.
I mean, either
No Thai
on the
food.
planet
No
or in
Thai
the
food.
restaurant.
Yeah.
It's just. But I mean,
Try to get an Uber there.
either
No Thai
on the
food.
planet
No
or in
Thai
the
food.
restaurant.
Yeah.
It's just. But I mean, this adapter, and it's funny you say that because I was having dinner with a friend of mine, just a regular liberal person, not a crazy person, left or right, but generally a liberal person, lives in Los Angeles, and I heard him say exactly what you said. I thought, oh, that's interesting that he's where you are. He said, we're not going to do anything about this. Let's be honest. We're going to have to start just adapting. I still think we should try a little harder for a little while more to do something about it. And I mean, you don't think if we led the way, at some point that would have some influence on other countries? Do you think China and India would just say, okay, forget it, we're just going to hold hands like Thelma and Louise and drive off the direct?
I mean, China would. I mean, I think China would immediately take advantage of our sacrifice on the economic front in order to gain more power. I mean, the reason I say this is because this is precisely what you're seeing from Russia, right? Europe has gone way more in a green direction than the United States has, and they're still basically powering their economy with Russian natural gas and oil. I mean, 50% of Germany's natural gas and oil were coming from Russia, and so the minute that Russia invades Ukraine, all of a sudden the prices double in these places, and it turns out all these investments in green energy were making them dependent on one of the world's most aggressive powers. Like there are real unintended consequences to listening to Greta Thunberg when you make policy.
Well, I did a whole thing.
You leave my Greta alone.
Real unintended consequences to listening to Greta Thunberg when you make policy.
Well, I did a whole thing on Greta.
I love her.
And Kylie Jenner
Ooh.
about 3 or 4 months ago, which was an indictment really of the younger generations because they're the ones who would have to care about this more than me. I'm 66. I've had my fun with the Earth. I mean, I want to save it for the future, but they're the ones who are like, you ruined the planet, and we're environmentalists. And I showed, I think Greta has like 13 million followers, and Kylie has 289 million. And she's always getting on board a private jet. And that generation, they seem to care so much about that kind of thing. They want materialism. Bitcoin, which is horrible cryptocurrency for the environment, uses more currency than some entire nations. They love it. Don't even know it's bad for the I've asked them. Oh no, that's news to me. So until the younger generation cares more than they do, and I don't mean, the Gretas, there are those, but in general, I just think people are just going to use up what we have until it's gone. And that's a bigger problem if you're 25 than if you're my age.
If you poison something, anything, a plant, a piece of grass, a person's mind, continuously for years on end, eventually it dies.
Until it's gone. And that's a bigger problem if you're 25 than if you're my age.
So on the climate change thing, if the proposals were for seawalls from the Republican Party and not this snowball means there's no global warming, then you'd be then you'd be in the ballpark.
Yeah, I also think we could lead more. I'm maybe I'm wrong, but I do think if we took the lead, if we planted our flag on the ground and said we're doing this, I think you can get people. I think you can shame people a little bit. Now I understand it's very hard to. Can you still use the term third world, or is that bad?
I do. I mean.
Oh, that's right.
Are we talking about
okay, well, it's bad.
Developing world. Which nation are we talking about here? Are we talking about nations where people are burning dung for fuel? Because, I mean, by the way, we should mention that when it comes to green energy, it's very easy for first world people to care a lot about solar panels. But when you're burning dung for fuel in Africa, that makes it very, very difficult for you to care.
But what I'm saying is, third world, okay, places that have not had air conditioning, places that have not had cars. Okay, and now they finally are getting them. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to say to them, Look, we've been enjoying these things for quite a long time
Right.
Stop that right now.
That's true.
now. Now, bad timing.
Yeah.
Bad timing for you.
Right.
You have to forego these things. So I take your point. It's going to be very hard for India and China. But, I mean, they're not stupid. I mean, they must understand that what good is it to win the economic race if you can't breathe?
Right.
I mean,
Well, but I
the
think-
air and
Who cares who the president is if we're all dead and don't have a planet to live on?
what good is it to win the economic race if you can't breathe? I
Well,
mean,
but I
the
think-
air in Beijing, don't they sometimes have to, like, take drastic measures
Oh, yeah.
because you can't breathe there?
Well, then the nice thing about being a communist dictatorship is that a few more people die, you know, what's a few more beans, more or less, is the nice thing about being a horrific tyrannical dictatorship. I mean, unfortunately, you know, communist authoritarian nations don't have a great environmental track record, from Chernobyl to
Right.
Beijing today.
I mean, a case could be made that we very often are callous about people's life in this country as well.
I mean, I will say we haven't killed 100 million people for an ideology recently. So that's
What are you talking about? Mao?
communism. Yeah, well, I mean,
absolutely.
The death of marriage has meant the death of male roles. If men are not protectors and provider, they lose their roles.
This was Ben Shapiro asked Bill Maher if he would ever vote Republican. I loved this very much. I like that there are two very intelligent people who don't necessarily have the same point of view, able to have a good conversation, a controlled and calm and friendly-ish conversation. Politics, religion, those two things I'm not willing to budge on. So until there's a person that I 100% believe in, I will go ahead and just do what I want to do. As far as, I don't feel like it's anybody else's business what I do with my politics and my religion. So I enjoyed this so much. I hope you guys did too. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
I can't shake the way you take me, baby.